Myself, Monica Nancy Priya, Assistant Professor in the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. In this semester, I'm handling the subject code EE3017 Embedded C Programming in the Regulation 2021. Today, we are going to discuss about an important concept in embedded C programming, header files and port reference. In embedded system, we not only write logic, but we also control hardware. So understanding header files and ports is very important for writing structured and professional programs. What is the introduction to the header files? A header file contains function declarations and macro definitions. For example, a student with the header file does not contain the full program. It contains function declarations, macro definitions, constants, structure definition. For example, we use printf. We don't write its full code. It is already declared inside the stdio.h. So header file tells the compiler these function exist somewhere. So allow code reusability and modular programming. This means we don't write the same function again and again. We divide the program into modules. Each module handle one task. For example, lcd.h, that is LCD functions. adc.h, that is ADC functions. Timer.h, it's a timer function. This is called the modular programming. And third one is extension, that is .h in C, .h or .hpp in C++. In C language, header file end with h.h. In C++, the header file end with .h or .hpp. Next, used in both C and C++. Header files are common in both C and C++. Next, why header files are needed? To avoid rewriting common function. If we want to print output, instead of writing full printing logic, we just use printf from stdio.h. So saves time and effort. Next one is to separate declaration and implementation. What does mean by declaration? Telling the compiler what the function does. And the implementation means writing the full function body. For example, in the header file, void display. This is the header file. In source file, void display and printf hello. It is a source file. This improves the clarity. Then, to improve program organization, the large projects may have 1,000 plus lines of code. Without header file, it becomes messy. So next one is to make large projects manageable. In embedded projects, different team members write different modules. Header file help in integrating everything. For example, include stdio.h. Include is preprocessor directive. This includes preprocessor directive and stdio.h is standard input output header file. Next one is what are the types of header files? First one is the standard header file. It is provided by the compiler. For example, stdio.h. It's a standard input output. stdlib.h. That is lib means library. So it's a memory allocation. math.h. That is mathematical operation. Next one is string.h. That is the string function. These are already available. The next one is the user defined header files. It is created by the programmer, that is R. That is include #include myHeader.h used for custom function. If we are using name it as Nancy's function, so #include Nancy.h. That is the customized function. So what are the functions we have to use? What are the functions the requirements you have to use? So if we use that custom function, so we have to use that user defined header files. So it's a project specific declarations. Next one is some common standard header files that is already discussed. stdio.h, that is the input and output function. That is printf, scanf, that is all. stdlib.h, that is memory allocation or conversions. That is malloc and free. Next one is math.h, that is mathematical functions, square and POW. Next one is string.h, that is string handling, strlen, str copy, that is. So next one is C type dot, that is the character testing, that is digit, is alpha, These are the basic building blocks of the C program. Next one is the common standard header files in C++, that is IO stream, that is this is also input output. Next one, that is C in, C out, we are using in the IO stream. Next one is IO manipulation, that is formatting output, how we are formatting the output. Next one is F stream, that is file handling. So how we are handling the file, we are using the F stream. Next one is CMath. CMath is math function. The next one is the vector, that is the dynamic arrays. It's all used in the modern C++ programming. Next one is the structure of user-defined header files. That is the syntax. If the file name is standard, that is the file name dot h is user-defined. What is the difference? If in def is if not defined. If n def is means that it not defined. If it in case of hash defined, it is known as the defined macro. This prevents the multiple inclusion. If we include same header twice, compiler will not give error. So then they displays the void main, void display, int add, int ab. These functions are the declaration. Finally, it ended with the end if. So it ends the program. Prevents multiple inclusion, proves modular design. Next one is the port embedded system. What is meant by port embedded system? A port is a group of pins. For example, in a microcontroller, port 1 may have 8 pins. Each pin can be a input, output, ports connect, LEDs, switches, sensors, motors, controlled using the header file. These are all controlled using the switches will be controlled using the header file. LEDs are used controlled using the header files. Input outputs are shared using the header files. All are controlled using the header files only. Next one is the port header file. What is meant by port header file? In 8051 microcontroller, we include include reg51.h. This is the header file defines. What are the port registers here having? P0, P1, P2 and P3. For example, P1 is equals to 0xFF, that is send data to P1. So what we are sending the data 0xFF means all bits are high. All pins in port 1 become high. If LED is connected, the LED will glow. So that is the point for 0xFF. That is the points, the bits are all high in the port 1. So if LED is connected in the port 1, the LED will glow. Next, header files in the embedded project structure. Now, we have a typical embedded project, that is main C, that is main logic, and the port H, that is the port control. LCD H is the LCD driver, and ADC is the ADC driver. Timer H is the timer function. What is the purpose of it? It have a separate hardware drivers for easy maintenance, reusable modules. If we change LCD, only LCD.H and LCD.C need modification. We need not do any change in the another projects, that is main, port, timer. We don't need to change the other things. So what is today's we have discussed about what are the header files are and why are they important, types of header files, the port control in embedded system, what is in the 8051 microcontroller, why it is in the how the ports are connected. In the next class, we will implement a simple LED blinking program using a port registers. These are the references, and thank you.